Hello, and welcome to today's HDI webinar. We're glad you've joined us for IT Service Management in 2022, Keeping the Lights On versus Delivering Employee Delight. I'm Tim McElligott. I'm the Editorial Manager and Principal Analyst at HDI, and I'll be your host for today's session. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. If you have any technical difficulties during today's session, please hit F5 or the Mac equivalent to replace your browser window. That should refresh it and take care of most of the issues. If you have any additional technical issues, please hit the yellow help icon below the slides and somebody will come on and take care of you right away. We encourage the audience to ask questions at any time during this discussion. To do that, just type your questions into the Q&A window on the side of your screen and hit the submit button. We may not be able to get to all of them, but we will get to as many as we can. Additional resources related to this discussion can be found in the resource list widget located on your console. And today's presentation will be available on demand shortly after the completion live event, and you'll receive an email reminder once that becomes available. And finally, thank you to Freshworks for sponsoring today's discussion. To give you a little bit of background, HDI's research, along with many other studies, makes it clear that improving employee experience improves outcomes in terms of productivity, in terms of recruiting and retention, and most importantly, in a competitive job market, for IT talent, employee satisfaction. Today, we're going to explore how IT leaders can and must make the leap from being reactive tech managers to being proactive change makers who work across every department to ensure IT services deliver sustainable competitive advantage for their businesses. Joining me today are Chris Chagnon, Vicki Rogers, and Deepthi Nagarajan. Chris is an ESM architect who designs, develops, and maintains award-winning experiences for managing and carrying out the ITSM process. Chris is currently a PhD candidate studying information systems with a focus on the user and service experience. As one of HDI's top 25 thought leaders and an ALE IT vanguard, Chris speaks nationally about the future of ITSM, practical applications of artificial intelligence and machine learning, gamification, continual service improvement, and customer service and experience. Welcome, Chris. Vicki Rogers is currently a service delivery manager in the Office of Information Technology at Georgia Tech, where she manages ITSM service request, incident, knowledge, problem, change, and configuration processes. With over 20 years of IT technical and leadership roles, Vicki has expertise in service management, change management, leadership development, and diversity in IT. She holds a BBA in business management, has an MBA, and an EDS in learning, leadership, and organizational development, where her research focused on cultivating and developing women leaders in higher education IT. Welcome, Vicki. And I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble with my interface here. Rounding out today's panel, Deepthi Nagarajan is a seasoned product marketing leader at Freshworks, driving adoption of Freshworks Fresh Services, ITSM, ESM, and PPM capabilities. Deepthi has extensive experience in B2B SaaS service, product marketing, consulting, and deployment of technology solutions to clients across global markets. Prior to joining Freshworks, Deepthi led enterprise marketing at, among other places, ST Microelectronics, Wipro Technologies, and most recently IBM, where she led marketing teams across enterprise contact management, cloud collaboration, and data and AI product portfolios. When she's not driving marketing strategy for global solutions providers, Deepthi enjoys spending time outdoors, baking, and practicing yoga. Thank you, Deepthi, for sharing your insight today. And again, thank you to Freshworks for sponsoring this fascinating exploration of a very important topic. And with that, let me move our slide forward. And I'd like to start off with a broad overview for our audience. Can each of you, starting with Deepthi, briefly share what you see as the most important current or developing trends impacting how IT should approach services delivery to ensure delighted customers across the organization?
Sure, Tim. The shift to remote and hybrid work has amplified employee expectations of workplace technology. With Freshworks, we did a global research that shows that despite a pandemic-driven tech spend surge, 9 in 10 employees are still pretty much frustrated by workplace technology. They're not happy with the technology that their employers are providing them to use on a daily basis. It reveals that businesses globally face a potential workplace crisis due to inadequate technology, which is damaging employee productivity, mental health, and their ability to retain talent. This is a serious problem that organizations across the globe are facing, which the study shows. And addressing this expectation gap is now business critical. When we surveyed, what we found was 7 in 10 business leaders, that is about 71% of them, acknowledge that employees will consider looking for a new employer if their current job does not provide them with the tools, technology, or information that they need to do their jobs well. I mean, if we are all working remotely mostly, and sometimes in a hybrid world, and it's very important for employees to have the right tools and technology in place for them to be productive, for them to be able to get their jobs done, and then look at other priorities that they have in life. So I think workplace technology is totally important in today's shift to remote and hybrid work, and that's some of the trends that we've recently observed here at Freshworks.
Tim, I think you're on mute.
Despite all the warnings, I'm on mute once again. Chris, what trends are you keeping an eye on?
I think one of the biggest things is very similar to what Deepthi said, is the move to remote and hybrid work has really changed the focus of what we really mean by enabling self-service and employees to self-resolve issues. We've always had this big self-service push. It's been part of the shift left strategies that many of us have adopted over the past years, and we've all actualized that through our self-service portals. One of the things we're realizing, though, is that remote and hybrid work doesn't just mean that somebody's working from a different place. It could be a different time zone, a different country, a different entire, way of working, 2-hour shift, 2-hour shift, 2-hour on, 2-hour on. And that means that we need to start thinking about how that self-service is really adding value to our employees. Just like Deepthi said, if we are creating too much friction for people, they are going to leave for other opportunities. It's no longer about the career advancement and the salaries alone. While those things are very important, we want our employees to maintain productivity and to be happy using the things that we've created.
Great. Vicki, what are the trends that you're seeing out there?
Well, I think at the core of everything for me right now is that finding and retaining those good employees. So when you talk about communicating value and providing value to your organization, then you got to have the people to do it. And I hear I'm not the only person struggling with that right now. So in the midst of the Great Resignation, it's all about finding the right people. I mean, right now it feels like we need to find just the body sometimes to put in those places. But if we don't find those right fits for our organizations and our teams, then we won't be successful in providing that value that Chris talks about. So that's the core of everything for me right now.
That's great. And the trends that you guys are referring to show up very clearly in a recently completed survey that we did, the trend State of Tech Support 2022. Some things have changed since we did that at the beginning of the year, but there's some very interesting results there. We'll be releasing that very shortly, just to do a little self-promo. Staying with Vicki, how can IT leaders make the critical leap from being reactive tech managers to being proactive change makers and help all employees, all stakeholders really deliver sustainable competitive advantage across the business? Where should they start? How do you figure out what all of your stakeholders need as you're entering this process?
Well, that's the name of the game. I feel like if you've ever worked in IT support, making that transition from being reactive to proactive is one of the hardest things you ever do, because the very nature of what we do was react to people that are having problems. But we really need to talk about how we can provide that value that Chris talked about. And for me, I think that we need to shift in a direction where we empower our employees to make those decisions and make those and have that strategy themselves for going forward. And all that should funnel up to a central idea, but we need our employees to feel like they're valued and they're trusted in a way that they can make their own decisions. And then it's all about that constant transformation. We have got to be constantly improving, constantly transforming. That needs to be the culture of our organizations, not just we all made this huge leap in March of 2020, and we changed the way we do business, and we've all seen those changes. And I think on some level, and I will admit this, we think, gosh, I wish it would just slow down and we could just go back to the way things were before. But the reality is we're not. It's never going to change. So we've got to learn to lean into that, step into that, and become comfortable in a world where we can constantly be improving and transforming. And then create a culture of continuous learning. And that's what HDI is all about. And that's one of the things I really love about HDI is that we get together and as a group and as a family, we're constantly learning new things and finding that just real perpetual transformation of our processes, our people, and the way we think. And I think that's the core of how we really do make the leap to being change makers.
That's great. Thank you. Deepthi, how does technology support those efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. The new age workforce has very little tolerance for archaic tools today. At a time when employees are considering moving jobs without any hesitation, there's never been a more critical moment for companies to take a step back and relook at their technology setup, or they're going to be risk losing the war for talent and tangible competitive advantage and business success. So how technology can support those efforts is you need to bring in the right tools and technology from the right vendors with an employee-first approach and rethink how you deliver services to your employees. It's just not about providing yet another tool for an employee to use, but you need to rethink the whole service delivery process from a holistic experience to employees with the right technology. So for example, providing services to employees in their channel of choice could be one. Today, your employees spend most of their productive days on collaboration tools like Slack or MS Teams because they are working with the other colleagues in those tools. So you might probably want to rethink about how you support employees in these modern channels of their choice. Choosing a technology that can deliver modern, intuitive, and intelligent experience to your employees can solve their service management issues and leave them happy and more productive to do their jobs.
That's great. Chris, what's your perspective on making the great leap from reactive to proactive?
I think one of the really important things that both Deepthi and Vicki touched on is the word experience. I'm a little biased as somebody who's finishing up a PhD in UX, but experience really does matter. That's just a point-blank statement that's not that controversial to say. But what we need to think about is how do we enable that experience focus? How do we start to change the conversation from IT as this walled garden enabler of services to IT as the provider of services and then strategically enabler across the enterprise? As we work on that type of thing, we need to start thinking about what the experience of something is as we're doing it. Just like Deepthi said, we have lots of tools. We can choose lots of tools. There are so many tools out there. Sometimes we buy more than one of them. But one of the things that we're not so good at yet, even among the woke organizations that understand experience, is we don't ask those questions of how many clicks does it take to enter an expense report? How many clicks does it take to create a ticket? What is that process like? Are we asking them for information that we already know? Is it that we're asking them information that we should already know and somehow we don't already know? We're putting a lot of burden on our users when we deploy these tools, and we say, well, yeah, an expense report could be 55 clicks, but should it be? And I think that's a big aspect of that. Real quick, my friend Tim, you are muted again.
It's one of those things. I should not be allowed a mute button. I apologize to everybody. So Chris, you've talked about some of them, but what are some of the other common barriers that you and your peers are encountering as you work to shift the focus, both in terms of external barriers that come, from whether it's tools or culture or whatever, and things that IT leaders and teams also need to be vigilant about so you don't create some of those speed bumps yourselves?
I think one of the things to really consider there is our move across the enterprise. There's this big buzzword, enterprise service management, the shift from ITSM to ESM, and it's an amazing thing. But one of the things that we need to consider there is what we're doing and how we're enabling other areas within our groups, our organizations, our enterprise, whatever we want to call that, to provide world-class, amazing, high-quality experiences and services. So as we think about that, one of the examples I like to use is this example of the outlet. Most of our offices are walls, even at home. We have an outlet on the wall. Maybe next to it, there is a coaxial cable, there's an Ethernet cable, there's a phone cable. We know we as these IT experts who have been living and breathing service desk know that one of those goes to telecom, one goes to the networking team, one of them might even go to the facilities team. And we know what that is. But to the end user, we want to provide this experience that's seamless. And we don't want to create this extra work for them to say, well, actually, you entered the ticket to the wrong place. We're going to close it. Or actually, you entered this ticket to the wrong place. We're going to pass it over the wall. It's the same thing as when we were only working on phones. When we only had phones and not these amazing tools, we would, don't just forward someone. You should do a, warm handoff. You should do the same thing with your tools and technologies as well. And I think a lot of that type of thing is what we're really striving for enterprise service management and deploying that type of thing out there. Some aspect of that comes from our other teams saying, like, how come we're still working on an email inbox that gets 300 emails per day and things get lost? And then some other aspect of it does come from, we have these tools. Why would we buy all these separate line of business tools when we can probably enable that across the board? And that's really what we're starting to get at when we say, let's think about experience.
Yeah, and that's critical. I mean, you're asking for a lot of money. You're asking for a lot of support from leadership, and you've got to be able to tell that story very clearly, I think. Vicki, what should the practitioners in our audience be on the lookout in terms of barriers, both external and sort of self-created? Oh, Vicki, you're on mute now. It's a team effort, guys.
Who's got their bingo card filled out now? I mean, so for me, and I'll probably use this word in every answer I give, but for me, it really is about that value. How do we provide the value to the organizations that we serve? And, Chris gave me just a little bit of PTSD when he talked about expense reports, because I don't know about y'all, but every place I have ever worked, they're paying everywhere. And so how can we step back from that and go, all right, let's give our users the kind of experience that will make them feel good about overall administrative. And so we're shifting at Georgia Tech. We're shifting from a service desk traditional model to an enterprise service desk that will encompass HR and financials and all kinds of facilities. And we have to realize that these partnerships, we need these partnerships to build, and we need them to build in a way that our users will be able to just do their jobs. That's what they want to do. So I think that's the key. I think it's the secret.
Yeah, no, the expense report reminds me of the IRS, right? So they should know everything that we've done. They've got a record of it. Why do I have to then fill it in and say more? Deepthi, what are you seeing in terms of barriers and maybe stumbling blocks as you're working with your customers?
Yeah, so when we meet our customers, when we meet IT leaders, they say that traditionally IT has been seen as a support function, and that's changing. So what we're witnessing is a shift for IT to be providing more value to the business. And what I've seen with customers is that it's important to drive alignment with all the stakeholders and take everyone along in setting the right expectations on what this service management experience is going to be for your employees, right? Be it your HR leader or your finance leader or your facilities leader, all of them have to be aligned with the IT leader to provide the unified service management experience or the enterprise service management experience that Chris spoke about. And convincing all the key stakeholders is also important here because, change is hard. We all have been through different change management across our careers in different companies, and change is really hard, but it's essential to move forward to something better and to implement a new service management solution that's modern, that's intuitive, that your employees love. So what I would suggest is it's important for you to ask, why do we need to do this today? And why do we need to do this today and see the value, right? When we can find answers to these two questions and figure out what the value drivers are and drive alignment and transparent communication among all the stakeholders who are involved in this technology buying process, then what you're going to do is you're putting your employees first and giving them the right solution that they need to do their best job and be more productive. Communication is really key here. What is changing? What are the new things that they would be getting from the new service management system? Communicating those changes across all levels in the organization and making everyone adopt to this new technology and come along with you in this service management journey. To provide a holistic employee experience to your employees is critical for successful technology implementations that you want to carry out for any service management, upgrades.
Yeah, it seems like a great mystery. How do we know what our users need? And I think the answer is pretty clear, and it's one word: ask. So as we've all talked about, and as we're all very, very well about, over the last few years, IT departments have done, there's no other way to put it, a truly heroic job to keep services flowing, keep the lights on. The entire workforce made a shift to remote work. Now we're going to go back to office. Sorry, guys, it's coming back around. But because of the urgency and the necessary speed of that transition over the last couple of years, many IT departments had to find workarounds, right? They deployed partial or suboptimal solutions for specific challenges. And Deepthi, can you talk a little bit about where things stand today, and what IT leaders need to focus, or where, I should say, IT leaders need to focus their investments to rationalize and optimize service delivery infrastructure processes and strategies for this new reality now that we're, hopefully through the emergency?
Sure. So we met IT leaders across the spectrum during the pandemic. Some had no help desks to manage in a remote first world because when all this happened, they were really grappling to see, okay, how can we set a help desk up and running and, take it to a remote fashion, right? Nobody's able to walk up to a service desk to report an issue. So they took this opportunity to digitally transform themselves and set up their help desk to provide new channels for employees to report their service issues and also provide services. So keeping services up and running has always been the priority. But what we're also seeing IT leaders focus and shift their investments towards is also about taking it to the next level and looking at streamlining their digital IT operations, and as well as providing a robust infrastructure to keep the business going. They're also looking to have a unified platform for service delivery across all departments. They found success with the IT department taking care of the service requests for IT-related issues for employees. Now they're looking to expand it to other departments like HR or finance to provide that seamless experience and service management experience for all their employees. Like Chris mentioned, right? I mean, it's the same employee who's having a payroll issue, who's having a network issue, who's also having issue with, the HR team for, some of the things that are going on. So it's one employee. So how you can provide that enterprise service management experience is something IT leaders have started to think about, and they're having conversations with us on how our technology can help solve for that problem.
Great. Chris, where are you targeting your attention and I guess, recommending investment over the next 12, 18 months for your organization?
I think there are a few key areas there. One of them is what Deepthi touched upon, which is providing a centralized and seamless experience. One of the things I'd like to say there is you don't need to have an amazing platform that can do it all. There's a platform that can get 80% of the way there probably out there for you. But if there's already existing tooling out there, finding a way to make, a self-service portal that is a launching pad. We literally call ours our hub because it's the mentality where you say, we don't need to keep reinventing the wheel 1,000 times. But if we provide a starting point for you, or we build integrations, we have the team that we have the confidence in that are able to integrate to these other tools or products we have, we can still provide a seamless experience in that way. With that said, on the topic of integrations, one of the things that I think we're going to need to start assessing is all of those things that we launched at the start of the pandemic. It was an amazing catalyst for change, and it let us get some things done that we've been wanting to do for years. With that said, many of us built a lot of these things in a week. We looked to vendors, we built these remote desktop integrations, we built new portals, new tools, new functionalities, new processes and things like that. I think it's about time that we start to evaluate what those are. So I think over the next 12 to 18 months, there needs to be a little bit of cleanup on some of those things. But while we're doing it, maybe we should start to invest some resources into looking at some other things as well and say, what has our digital transformation really looked like? One of the things that Tim and I have mused about for a while is digital transformation has been a buzzword. It has been around longer than I've been alive, probably. But with that said, there was this initial impetus where we said, let's just make all of our paper forms PDFs. And then we post them on a website and we tell them to email that PDF to a person. Digital transformation. But one of the things that we maybe need to start to look at is, can we leverage our existing tools or other tools that we have access to and start to make these really wow processes? And one of the things that you need to consider there is there's some really boring things that you can delight your users with. One of the ones that we have in higher ed is there's an office called the registrar. The registrar does some really amazing stuff, but they really are the paperwork office. It's, course enrollment scheduling, just things like that. Very important, critical to running a university. But nobody in the history of ever has been jazzed about filling out a course replacement request form. But if you can help to automate some of that, send the approvals to the right person, get it so they can click one thing in your self-service portal or an email, or if there's multiple levels of escalation because it needs to go to an academic advisor, the professor who's teaching the course, and all sorts of things like that, I think that's where we can start to really show the power of, the focus on digital transformation and enterprise service management efforts. It's digitizing some of those processes and making them just work. Letting the user be surprised at how simple something was is really a big focus for my next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, those are great points. I think of the example of one of the early adopters was the medical industry, right? So we were going to go to the paperless doctor's office. And what that resulted in the short term, from my perspective, was a healthcare provider looking at a screen instead of looking at me. Right. So we need to think about what is it that we're asking people to do. Vicki, where are you guys focusing at Georgia Tech?
So a lot of the same pain at Georgia Tech. We have 40,000 students, and we sent them home over a weekend in March of 2020. And we taught professors that had never used online platforms to use tools they'd never thought about using before, and that they didn't need their VCRs and in-person lectures anymore. But we did a lot of change in a really short amount of time, just like Chris said. And so we became very familiar with the term MVP, minimum viable product, because a lot of the things that we put in place they worked and they were good, but we didn't have the luxury of spending a lot of time on them. So yeah, for the next year and a half, we have to focus on maturing the things that we did really fast in 2020 and just survived through the last year. I don't know about y'all, but does it feel like 2 years now? I mean, it's like there's been this vacuum of time. And the other thing for us is actually our IT leaders, we met last Thursday and had a managers retreat and started really reprioritizing where are we at now? Because I think the last couple of years it's been all about survival. And so now it's time for us to step back and, okay, let's get back into the real world. Let's focus on what we need to focus on, and let's set some priorities and move that way in a strategic way rather than in that reactive way that we talked about a couple of questions ago.
Yeah, I sometimes have this picture in my head of a little robot that's been made out of spare parts, and it's just going, I can do the job, but help me. So, Vicki, staying with you, let's talk a little bit about the critical role of communications. Deepthi, you touched on it. It's critical when you're going to effectively deliver IT services and to help all of your stakeholders understand the work that your team does beyond reacting to trouble tickets and service requests and, why isn't my laptop turning on? And why is that transparency in terms of what you're doing beyond the obvious so important?
So I think communication is the core of everything. We probably all agree on that. I think that it's just so important. Relationships and communication, that's where everything starts and ends. And for us, we have to make sure we get that seat at the table, make sure that we're in those conversations. And communications change just like everything else. And so we have to learn how to build those relationships and communicate in a way that works now for our new workspace. We are not going back into the office. In fact, we've given up our physical building. So it's a whole new world, and we need to think about that. And then at the end of the day, we have to talk with our customers, not at them. And I think IT, maybe in the old days, I'm not sure that many of y'all remember that, but we used to think we're IT, they need us, and we can do whatever we want. And it's not like that anymore. They have lots of options now. And so we have to have conversations with our customer to understand their needs, not just react over and over and over again. And that transparency is what will continue to build the trust. If they think we're working behind the scenes doing super secret things, or if they're big brother in their lives, I mean, we have to talk a lot about security where I live and work. They have to understand why we're doing what we're doing and how it benefits them. And then we have to listen to what their needs are and provide them with what they need, not just what we think they need.
Great. Deepthi, from your perspective as a solution provider, what are some of your thoughts on communication and transparency, and how, how tool providers need to enable that?
Yeah, I think, like Vicki mentioned, communication is critical for the success of any project. Today, your IT support teams are providing support in a remote manner. So it's important to integrate your service management system to all the collaboration and communication tools that you use inside your company. Freshservice integrates very well with Microsoft Teams as well as Slack, right? So those are the two main collaboration or communication platforms that the IT teams are using. We have integrations in place that helps the agents to contextually collaborate around an issue and then provide instant resolution to a problem or an incident that's been reported. So we are definitely thinking about providing the right channels for the IT agents and leaders to collaborate and then resolve issues faster and provide instant resolution to employees. So so look for technology providers who have those integration capabilities with those communication tools so that you can make your service desk delivery successful.
Right. So you're not just enabling the user experience with your platform, but also improving the user experience, hopefully, in terms of enabling other critical capabilities. Chris, you and I have talked about this a lot. This is kind of a favorite topic of yours. So can you talk to me a little bit about how you view communication and transparency and how critical that is?
I think one of the most important things that we're seeing is a shift in needing that transparency. One of the big buzzwords that's up and coming, we went from shift left to ESM to all these, is XLAs, experience level agreements. I don't know that my organization is quite mature enough yet for those, but I am learning as much as I can about that. But one of the big things that you see a lot of these frameworks coming out of that area touting is you need to keep things open and public. And I think that mentality is really important. So their aspect has generally been like when you're doing constant surveying and getting things about the experience and the atmosphere of your company, showing that data, because we all have it. But transparency for me extends to almost all aspects. As long as there isn't a security risk, as was just said, why would we need to hide things necessarily? So for me, a big aspect of that is we know what assets a user has, show it to them. Show them every asset we know they have. If they don't think they have that asset, then they can contact us and say, I definitely don't have a laptop from 2006. And then we can go and say, you don't. Let's find out where that laptop is. But even showing things like our internal software catalogs, linking that to our locations, letting people know what software is available in which rooms or which conference rooms, what each room has as far as technology-enabled equipment. Does this room have a VCR? You mentioned that earlier. Might be important for that one professor who still refuses to give up that VCR. I love being able to show and track all of that type of information as long as it's stuff that we're tracking anyway. I think being transparent about that is important. Communicating to our users is also very important for me on that end, where we start to think about things like our change enablement or change control processes that we have. We have our CAB every week. We approve different things. Communicate it. We put it up on our portal, every single one of those, unless it's security related. We say, here's this thing that we're doing. Here's this process we're enabling. Here's info you need to know. Rather than saying, yes, the network is going to go down at 2 a.m. next Thursday, and oops, yes, we're going to get 30 tickets about it. Yep, the network is down Tuesday at 2 a.m., and we've told you about it weeks in advance, and now you're supported, and if it goes down, we can help you out there. I think just communicating in general with our users for stuff that we historically had kind of kept internal is a really powerful thing that we can do, because it changes the context of the relationship with our users from, IT is this mastermind to IT is your peer and we're helping you out. And then if there are big things where someone says, well, no, at 2 a.m., we're doing this giant critical process, I don't know what that would be, but it gives them that opportunity to talk to us and maybe have interactions that we have been missing before.
Sure, or just say, listen, I'm working on something mission critical here. I can't go down. What are you going to do to help me figure that out? And to your point about the 2006 laptop in terms of proactivity, not only, I don't have that thing anymore, but How about the people who are still using them? Maybe we need to get proactive about making sure that they have a slightly more modern tool. So I'm going to stay with you, Chris, for the moment.
From my cold dead hands, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's true. Staying with you, Chris, we've talked about the importance of IT helping stakeholders and customers get to the right place to address their issues in situations where, maybe it's not really IT's responsibility. You can make the argument, not ours. Can you share some other examples? You talked, sort of about the wall plate. Any other examples you can share about situations and how support organizations really need to think about that process?
Sure. I think as everything becomes technology as well, there's some really literal examples like the wall plate, but there's also these things that maybe we as IT might not know as much. I don't want to go too specific to my own life, but even this morning we had a case where a student had sent a feedback ticket through our self-service portal saying, I'm not getting help on a ticket. Not the type of feedback that I would normally, get there, but we want to help them. We want to figure out what's going on with that. The student had sent like 3, 4, 5 updates about this ticket. It had gone to a team that deals with data visualization and analytics, but that team doesn't historically do the installation of the software that does data analytics. So it's very interesting. So you can see how the ticket ended up there, but there's these clearly delineated roles that we internally have, but to the end user, they just want help. They don't care who does it. They just want the software. So that's one of those types of discussions that we have to have where we're saying, like, we've got all these other groups in here, but maybe we need to do some of our own things there to start to assess that better. But again, it's all for the end user experiences. They don't care who fulfills it. They just need that software to do their job. I think there's a lot of that type of stuff going on as well, where it's just we need to help our users, and how do we help them?
Deepthi, I mean, we talked a little bit about this, in terms of the communication aspect of it, but there's sort of 2 aspects to it. One is helping, let's call them end users, understand what's going on and where they need to go. But the other is helping IT tell those end users where perhaps they need to go, aside from, where the ticket ended up. How do you go about helping that?
Yeah, sure. So the IT is probably like kind of, we have mechanisms in place where the right ticket get assigned to the right group so that the employees get the right type of support that they need. So we have all those capabilities in our tool that can help manage those, especially when they are putting together an enterprise service management desk. And also what we are seeing is with integration with tools like Slack, we can also send out, push notifications to employees about, what is something that's coming, like how, Chris mentioned, so that people don't open a lot of tickets. So you can send those push notification through the right communication channels. We also put up on the, the portal. You can also put all your notifications on the portal so that people get to know, this is what is coming. And then, they can be very well prepared to it. So we really leverage all channels of communication that are available to communicate to your employees about, what's happening and what they can expect and what services that they can expect during this period of time.
Right. So automating where it makes sense, making it easier not only for the end user but also for IT to do that proactive notification. Hey, you sent this to the wrong place. We've moved it on to the right place, and you're going to be hearing from them soon. And really letting the tool help IT in that regard. Vicki, what's your perspective on IT's role in addressing issues that maybe have not traditionally been or should not be at all in IT's wheelhouse?
Well, the first thing I think of when you ask that question is the fact that we ended up sitting in the state legislature in the state of Georgia and helping them with their COVID testing. Our leadership at Georgia Tech envisioned a place when COVID first happened where we could have preventive tests for all of our students and faculty and staff that had to remain on campus, because there were some that did. He wanted everyone to be able to test once a week at no cost, easy in and out, without exposure. And so our IT department stepped up, and we used some of our existing tools that will remain unnamed to create appointments, to log information, to deal with health data. And so our people that stayed on campus tested once a week for the last 2 years. It's still going on, as a matter of fact. And they could go in seamlessly and make an appointment, go get their test in and out in just a few minutes. And it helped us identify hotspots and keep the spread from happening in Midtown Atlanta, where everything is so tight anyway. And I think we did a great job of it. Because we did so well, he offered our services to the state legislature. So when they started back meeting in session at the Capitol in Atlanta, our folks were on campus doing tech support for the health department that was in there testing our legislators so that they could continue to run government. So it took a lot of work. It took a lot of time. There was a lot of weekends and nights, but it was something that we stepped up, and it helped us become that partner with the Institute to show them that we're there to help them through anything we face. And I think we have to do that in this world that we're in now. We just have to be a team, not just an IT team, but a team as a whole, as organizations, and then as citizens of the world, if you may.
Mm. So it turns out you can't spell public health without IT. Who knew? So that's a great example, Vicki, of collaboration. I'm sorry, was somebody else speaking? There was a little bit of noise going on there. Oh, okay, sorry. So that's an example, as I was saying, of collaboration that focuses on delighting your customer, whoever that customer happens to be. And Vicki, I'd like to hear a little bit more of your perspective on where IT can act as a center for collaboration across the organization. And as an IT leader, what your perspective and advice on the role that you and your teams can and should be playing specifically in enabling collaboration across different departments, different parts of the business, different parts of the university in your case.
So that's a really great question, is how do we step into those roles? I mean, again, we have to be that partner. We have to join with them and what their needs are. Our CIO, who is a great leader, Darren Hubbard, he says that there's nothing anyone does at the Institute that we don't have a part in. And it's the truth. I mean, nobody does anything without technology these days. I mean, even if they're still using the tape recorder. When I first came to work at Georgia Tech, one of the directors of IT met with me, and I was asking him what his greatest concerns were. And he said, my concern is not whether or not somebody's laptop works on campus. My concern is that the equipment that the researcher sitting in the middle of Fiji doing research, if that machine is working for them and they can capture the data they need to find the cure to a disease. And so talk about feeling important in your work. I mean, we have to think about the grand scale of what we do, and all of our organizations. I mean, I love higher ed, and I think Georgia Tech's a really cool place to work. But all of our organizations have an important part in the world, and how do we help them meet their goals? And so it is all about building those partnerships, having those conversations, and finding out what their needs are, not just assuming.
Yeah, I think that's a critical way of looking at it, and I really of sharing with your teams about the importance of their jobs and what they do every single day. Chris, how does your team? You talked a little bit about this, but how does your team encourage and support cross-functional collaboration? I know there's a maturity issue, ESM, et cetera, but on a daily basis, how do you guys try to be that hub?
I think a really big thing is to let people have access to your tools. I think by not restricting them, and that's not to say everyone should get admin rights, we're not putting that out there, but letting people be part of the conversations. We did a similar thing with the COVID process on campus, and we used our tool to build that out because it was the right workflow automation. Beyond just being really great ticketing systems, portals, and things like that, a lot of these tools that are out there have really powerful workflow builders. So leveraging these existing tools and allowing other people to have access to them has been super powerful. I mentioned the example of the registrar, but every time we go to a new group, it's not, we're building this thing for IT. It's we're building this thing for the university. We're building this thing for the entire enterprise. So I think about how we're going to be redoing and refreshing our surveys and customer satisfaction and different aspects this summer. And it's not like I'm building that just for help desk tickets. I am building that, and any other team that wants to have access to it, we can also enable it for them. So I think that mentality moving forward with any new process or workflow that we carry out is the kind of collaboration that we really want to think about having with our other teams. It's, here's this new cool thing that we're doing. Do you also want it? We're not forcing it, but if you'd like it, it's going to be here for you too.
Great. And Deepthi, I know you do, in addition to all your other jobs, you do pre-sale consulting with clients, right? So helping them figure out how to use the tools that you're providing. What are you hearing from them, and what are you helping them think about in terms of this aspect of collaboration?
Yeah. So with IT's role changing to be a strategic value driver for the business, what we are seeing is IT leaders need to constantly collaborate with other cross-functional leaders and see what technology needs to be implemented to improve the operations or the workflows for each of those functions. Like Chris rightly mentioned, right? The workflow builders is such a powerful tool which can enable automation and automate some of the critical processes that are there in each function. Then they need to propose innovative solutions that can transform businesses digitally using advanced technologies like automation and AI. And IT needs to work with all these functions to implement these solutions that are both customer-centric as well as employee-centric in nature so that they can drive sustainable business growth for the business that they're operating in. So it's more about leveraging the power of automation and bringing and automating those workflows and operations is what is going to be important. And collaborating and talking about that and making that change happen lies with IT.
Yeah, and I think, just from my experience as a non-IT person, IT understands a lot about the workflows across every department just by the nature of the way we do work now today. And I think that some of the ways of thinking, design thinking about user experience, thinking about interfaces, thinking about interaction, those are not necessarily the things that people in HR or facilities or wherever else, maybe those aren't the terms they think in. So you have to be able to understand and converse with those people about, here's how IT sees things, here's how we think it applies to you. Now you come back to us and tell us if that makes sense. So I think that's a really a critical perspective to bring to this. So everybody take a deep breath, because we're coming into the home stretch here, and I'm going to start with Deepthi, then Chris, and we're going to finish with Vicki. You get the you get the hot seat, Vicki. As leaders who are guiding this effort every day to shift perspective and focus from keeping the lights on to truly delighting all of your internal and external stakeholders, how should IT teams define, measure, and then recognize success in this effort?
That's a great question, Tim, because after you do all this, you really want to be able to go back and see how you've improved, right? So you can measure your service desk efficiency with some key metrics. The most important measure of immediate success is your CSAT scores, right? Because when you observe an uptick in your scores, you know that your internal customers are happy and satisfied with the services that you've provided to them. You can also measure your average first response time, your average resolution time, your average first assign time, your first contact resolution time, and overall the mean time it takes to resolve an issue or an incident. I strongly urge each one of you to check our Fresh Service Benchmark 2022 report that is posted on our website to discover the key metrics that you can start to benchmark your IT team's performance and gain insights on IT service desk excellence across employee experience, agent productivity, or service desk efficiency, as well as scalability. Also, Fresh Service as a product has an inbuilt analytics module that helps you track some of these key metrics that we showed here, and which can help you in improving your service desk efficiency. I mean, you need to measure what matters, and only if you measure, you know what you need to improve from where you are to where you want to be. So analytics plays a key role there, and understanding that need coming from our customers, we have built in the analytics module into the product so that you can start measuring the right things that can drive you for success.
That's great. Chris, what's your perspective on that? Obviously, with IT, for that matter, every form of contact center service desk, metrics are critical to measuring success. But what are some of the other ways that leadership needs to consider and talk about success?
Beyond every
and metrics as well.
Just mentioned, yes, they're very important. But for me, one of the things that I think that we don't do enough of in IT is just, a year in review, taking a look back and just seeing what we've done. One of the things that I try to keep track of is a change log for every single thing I do. So not necessarily, the full official change management. I do try to enter those as much as I can because that's being a good little doobie. But just keeping track of every little improvement, every little enhancement, every project that we do that is big, every project we do that's medium or small, all these things that we're doing that we might not otherwise keep track of. That way, when you look back and, it's great for your employee self-appraisals, but it's also really great just to be able to say, we did this, and to remember it. You can celebrate the work and the contributions from other team members, but it's saying, here's this process that we digitized last year. And then you can pull some metrics on that if you really want to. So maybe not your traditional metrics or KPIs that you're used to, but even just saying, like, because we digitized this process, we were able to process 11,000 of this type of request, whereas before this was a paper request that took 5 FTEs. That's what's really impactful to me. But by automating and digitizing this, just knowing some of those numbers, it's not really a score you can provide to it, like the 11,000 add drop forms for the registrar request. It's not a KPI, but it is a great number to know that you did. Process improvement, just in hindsight, is an amazing thing.
That's great. Thank you so much for that, Chris. And Vicki, as I said, you get the last word today on making the transition from tech manager to change maker. Go ahead and take us out.
Tim, you're a brave man. You never know what I'll say at the end now.
That's what makes it fun.
No, I mean, so definitely agree with everything that Deepthi and Chris said. And I mean, you can't improve it if you don't measure it. So, the very first step is measure it. And then, think about it over time, notice those improvements or those not improvements and where you can go. But for me, it is all about telling the story. And if you've been to any of my presentations in the last couple of years, I throw a slide up at some point that's got a picture of Legos that are totally ripped off from Stanford. And Stanford, if you Google Stanford Lego story, you'll see the image. And what it does is it shows you the difference between having data. And so imagine this pile of multicolored, multi-shaped Legos like all of our kids have had. Sorted is putting them in colors, arranged is stacking them in certain ways, present them visually so they look pretty. But what you really want to get to is the story, and that's when you build the house or you build my husband got for Father's Day, he got the Top Gun fighter plane. Some of y'all know what that is. I don't know what it is. It's F something. And and so it's building that plane and having that end result with your big pile of Legos. And so that's what we want to do for our organizations, is take all that data that we get and then have it tell the story of where we are and how we can get better and what kind of difference we're making for the people we work with, for our customers, and for ourselves. So that's the last thing for me, is make sure that you're capturing that data, but that you're also telling the story about what it means.
I think that's a great, that was fantastic. And I think it's a great point. IT has moved from sort of shaman in the background, don't ask us questions, we know what we're talking about, to storytellers, right? And I think that if you're going to make the shift from a tech manager to a change maker, storytelling is absolutely critical. So I really, really appreciate that perspective, Vicki. So what are we down to here? We got about 7 minutes, so obviously we are not going to get, Michael Pulse tells us it's an F-18. Thank you for that, Mitchell. I appreciate that. Going to ask a couple of questions, but first I just want to say I'm reading here from one of our attendees. Great presentation. All speakers were wonderful. He had to jump off early, but he wanted to say a huge thanks for all your efforts. I echo that very much. So a couple of quick questions. Are you seeing any particular challenges with customers, employees using cell phones versus laptop, desktop? I'll let Vicki go first since she went last time. Do you have any thoughts on that? No?
Yeah.
You can.
At the end of the day, you got to make sure that it looks right on the cell phone. And I know that to me, it sounds pretty basic. I mean, I did web design in a previous life, so it's like, of course you do that. But how many times do y'all go to something on your phone and you can't read it because it's not right? So I think that's the very basics, is making sure you can. Making sure all of your stuff is accessible. We have, and I bet many of your organizations, we have a whole team dedicated to accessibility and making sure that we're making things viewable for all of our audiences. So definitely keep that in mind. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
Great. Chris, I'm going to throw this one over to you. Who should be having the ESM conversation with units outside of IT?
I think it's really going to depend on your organization. That's a famous IT answer of it depends. But I think if you have a team that is currently overseeing a lot of the IT service management efforts, or that manages your tool, or if you're like me and that's all the same person, that's fine too. But if that role is there, I think give them the opportunity to continue those discussions they've been having within IT for quite some time and taking those out there. There's definitely going to be times where you want to involve other teams if there's integrations that are needed. So if you need to integrate into your ERP or something like that, you definitely want to involve them. But it's definitely something that you can start with, even just, a practitioner or individual contributor on a team, and having them have that talk and say, hey, we get this PDF form and it requires us to download it and we forget about it. Or, hey, we currently have this inbox that's shared between 9 full-time staff members and it gets 1,000 emails a week. And we kind of lose some sometimes because there's so many emails. Not that that ever happens, but sometimes it might. Those are the conversations I find that are really good to kick off. Anytime somebody says the word approval, your ears should be burning and you should say, I could automate that. I could improve that. Anytime where those workflows kind of kick in, I think the people having those discussions should be the practitioners and the people on your service management area that can kick them off. If you then need to bring it up to leadership as a strategic thing or to get resource allocation, I think that's definitely a way to do it.
That's great. Just real quick here, we do have a request. Deepthi, can you please share the name of the benchmarking reports again? I'd like to take a look at those.
Yeah, I just dropped the link in our chat. If you can share that link with all the attendees, that will be great. It's called the Fresh Service Management Benchmark Report 2022.
Great. Thank you very much for that. And then I'm going to let Deepthi take us out on this one because, thank you for sponsoring this. It's been just a fantastic conversation. But the question is, as you're looking about XLAs, we talk about customer delight and that sort of thing, but Simone has asked, what about the feeling of relief and working smoothly? How important is that in measuring XLAs? Just being able to do your job without having to think too much about it.
No, I think it's important for us to definitely look at our SLAs. When everybody's going customer first or employee first, you really need to have the right SLAs in place so that you respond in time. Here, I want to talk about how technology can help you here, right? We have virtual agents within our product, which can actually help you, provide instant resolution round the clock for your employees so that, all the repetitive mundane issues can be answered by a virtual agent, right? They can help you improve your deflection rates and help employees have self-service access to, the problem that they have by reading through a solution article and get their issues resolved, right? So there is technology that's come in here that's helping IT employees ease the pressure out of IT employees who are working around the clock, solving so many issues there. So virtual agents is something that I would definitely urge you all to take a look at and try from Fresh Service. And then you have your metrics in place, where your problem areas are, which type of, issues or incidents are taking most of your time. You can then start looking at, how you can assign subject matter experts for these type of issues. We have that now for our on-call management. You can put your on-call management schedules in place and put the right subject matter experts to work on the right issue so that, employees get fast resolution. And also an IT employee who's a subject matter on one issue gets to solve that issue faster because they know it in and out. So there are a lot of features in our product that help, the IT agent and the service desk improve their, service level agreements.
And I think that, it's important to note that whoever your solution provider is, these are the questions you should be asking. And of course, now that AI is sentient, some of these questions will change rather radically, but I think we'll probably be okay for the next couple of years on that. So Chris, Vicki, Deepthi, on behalf of HDI and on behalf of our audience, thank you all for absolutely fantastic conversation, for sharing your insight and your experience with us. I know I learned a ton, and I'm confident you've helped our audience delight their employees and create value all across our organization. So again, I'm looking forward to the next time we can all get together and having a similar conversation. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Tim. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. It was great talking to everyone here. Thank you. Bye.
Great. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. Of course, now we're all going to sit here wondering, is the camera off? It's not off yet, so don't anybody do anything too strange. And Max, if you could take us out, I'd appreciate it.